Obesity is one of the key causes of a whole variety of diseases: cardiovascular, cancer, mental health. So if we can treat it, if we can prevent it, if we can reduce it, it's brilliant for the entirety of society. Here, there is a deal where Pfizer thinks they've got something that's going to be able to give them a chance at playing in this very important area and very massive market, right? So the drugs are interesting. They're relatively early stage. We're looking to see with some new data coming up, whether some of the promise that we've seen earlier for these drugs that the company has, which the latest stage one is still in phase two. They need to start the phase three in 2026, whether they are as competitive as they looked in the earlier trials. There were some questions on efficacy, less so than side effect profile. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out.
Sam, could you get into the science a little bit and maybe, keep it basic for folks like Paul and me? Because Metsera is described as the next generation hopeful in obesity. They use these long-acting amylin analogs versus GLP-1. And I'm wondering, for people who might be holding out for Metsera's treatment, what that means versus the currently available Zepbound or Wegovy.
Yeah. So the latest stage drug is very similar to Wegovy and similar to tirzepatide or Zepbound. And the amylin drug is a little bit earlier stage. There are companies with more advanced drugs in that world, but they all kind of feed into the same pathway, which is the pathway that talks between your food intake and your satiety centers in your brain and your insulin centers in your pancreas. It tries to balance: I've eaten enough, let's stop eating now, and let's release some insulin, make it more sensitive so that we can deal with the onslaught of sugar that comes into our blood. That's where they are. It's that central to that space. There's cells in the gut that release glucagon-like GLP-1s, glucagon-like peptides, the cells in other parts of the body who are responding to it. So that's where these things sit. And amylin is just one of those agents in the middle of it.
Sam, just kind of stepping back on these GLP-1 drugs in general, there's a certain level of efficacy today. There's a certain level of, let's say, side effects, whether it's nausea or something else today. Is there room for improvement on both efficacy and side effects going forward with these drugs?
Yeah, I mean, with it's the balance that's the most important. With efficacy, I think we're pretty much there. I mean, there are folks that we know that go on a drug for a week or two and they lose 4 or 5 kilograms. That's fine. You don't want to lose much faster than that, because I don't think it's particularly healthy if you lose weight at a much higher speed. And also, you don't want to get much lighter than a 80 kilo or 90 kilo or 75 kilograms, depending on your size. So the key is, how do you get there? If you get there by having lots of side effects, then your probability of staying on the drug is lower. But we want you to stay on the drug. So it's a very, very tight balance. And then, of course, you have to figure out, well, am I happy taking a weekly injection, which I think a lot of people don't have a problem with it. But what if Metsera is right and push it to once monthly? What if some of the other competitors coming along with once every 3 months? Now, those are things that we have to wait and see how the data shows in terms of that balance I've just referred to.
Sam, we mentioned earlier the headline that the White House now says doctors may be exempt from H-1B visa fees that were just announced of $100,000. Obviously, that has huge ramifications for the medical industry. What does it mean, potentially, the $100,000 fee for H-1B visas for the pharma and the biotech industry in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think that any industry that requires skilled workers, I think the sector that's most exposed is one that you guys probably have already talked about, is the tech industry, right? In terms of pharma biotech, I think the US has pretty good existing talent. The point is, though, that sometimes a particular talent is based somewhere else. You just want that particular person. So why do you have to go through this process if they really are the one person who knows this particular disease area so well? And does really one or two people at that level make a difference, especially in a sector where US is already a leader? You're not really bringing in people to compete with the US talent. So that's something that I think is important to remember. Doctors, of course, a country that doesn't, like Europe, many countries in Europe aren't producing enough doctors, right. UK especially. You need to allow that.